Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the murder of Charlie Kirk. We're going to pay tribute to Charlie Kirk. You know, we at Crypto LLC, we love all Christians, and Charlie Kirk was a brave, courageous Christian that went out, debated people. You know, all he did was talk, didn't cause any trouble. You know, you can disagree with him, that's fine. That's what he was there for. He was there to talk with people that disagreed with him. And, you know, and for that, he got murdered, right? I think that most of the reason why he ended up being murdered is because of his Christian faith, because a lot of times in those debates, he came back to Jesus, right? He talked about, you know, certain arguments, certain perspectives, but he returned it to Jesus, he returned it to God. He talked about God in those debates. And so ultimately, I would make the argument that he wasn't murdered because of his Republican arguments. I think he was murdered because he was using the Bible as his arguments, which is the only real true argument. The only real truth is in the Bible, and he got murdered for that. And I just wanted to talk about him being courageous, being brave, being a great example for all Christians, right? We can all look at Charlie and see someone that talked about God, talked about Jesus whenever he could, and he got murdered for that. He got shot for that, right? All because of his love for Jesus, love for God. So we at Crypto LLC, as you guys all know, we love Jesus as well. And on almost all the videos, I talk about, you know, Bitcoin saves your wealth and Jesus Christ saves your soul. And you know, Charlie Kirk was a true Christian. It's, you know, watching his videos, he looks to be a true Bible believing Christian. So his soul is saved. He's in heaven right now with Jesus. You know, the one that we as Christians love and can't wait to meet. And that's where he is. So, just, it's very, very sad. Really, very sad. You know, a lot of people that knew him said good things about him. And, you know, that solidifies it even more that he was, in reality, just a good guy. You know, regular guy, regular good guy that loved Jesus, loved God, served Jesus. You know, did as best as he could. Went out there and debated people. You know, let's talk about it. You know, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Did it year after year, year after year, year after year. I don't even know how many death threats he got, how many problems he had. You know, throughout all those years, there's probably countless amount. But eventually, you know, he got what happened. And that's something we as Christians should always understand. You know, it's, you know, you know, you can pay the ultimate price, and Jesus talked about this, that, you know, they hated me first, you know, as in Jesus, and they will hate you. And we can see that manifested with Charlie. He talked about Jesus, and the hatred for Christianity is so severe in the United States from a lot of people, because Christianity is the light of the world, and it shines the light on their sin, and people hate God. And so as you tell them that they are sinful and they need a savior, they can't stand that. And this person that shot him could not stand it. And that's what happens. You know, it's predictable. It's sad. I know, I always hoped it wouldn't happen, because I seen all the debates he did. I was like, you know, it's not that hard to kill someone like that. It's not that hard. You can put up as much security as you want. You can do whatever you want. it's not that hard. And, you're always hoping and praying that it wouldn't happen, that, God would not allow that. He didn't. You can see years and years where it did not happen like that, where he was safe. And a lot of the other, people that go out there and they preach the Bible, right? They're safe until their time has come. And we can see that God made that decision, for Charlie Kirk. That was it. That was his, you can say that was his mission. And in God's plan, that is what had to happen, and that is what did happen. And it's very, very sad, but again, it's God's will, and in God's will, you don't see, you don't see why. A lot of times, in this situation, I think you can see why. It's going to create a lot of people, or actually push a lot of people to actually go to God, right? To come to Jesus. A lot of people might purchase a Bible for the first time. They might see this and be like, I can't believe he was murdered. For what? What did he talk about? He talked about Jesus. He talked about God. People, would be interested, and they buy themselves a copy of the Bible. They'll read it. They will look into it. They will make those decisions, right, for themselves. And at least they would read the Bible and get closer to God. It's so sad. Another tragedy with this whole situation is his family, right? He was 31. He had a wife. He had kids. It's very similar to me and my partner's situation, right? We're around that same age. We have families, we have kids. And so you think, hey, if that happened to me, right, what would my kids do? And that's, makes it like even more sad is, when you have little kids, and just imagine, like a day goes by, 2 days go by, and those kids are going to be asking, where's dad? Right? They're going to ask, like, where's dad? He's not going to come home day 1, day 2, day 3. A week's going to go by. And that sadness is going to set in for his wife, once all the funeral's over and all of that. And the reality is going to set in. And those kids are going to be asking, where's dad? Ask his wife, what are you going to say? Obviously you're going to say he's with Jesus, he's with God, but they're little kids. They don't understand. And it makes it even more sad when you think about it that way. So, yeah, overall, it's a giant tragedy. It's very sad. Hopefully, this will have like a revival effect in the United States and all over the world, actually, because there's a lot of Christians everywhere, and there's a lot of Christians that are trying to change their country, trying to change their culture, to come back to God, to come back to Jesus, and they're in their own situation, right? And they might have been listening to Charlie Kirk because he's a fellow Christian that's, has a world stage and everything. So hopefully this has that effect of emboldening people, emboldening Christians, making them more courageous, right? So they're not shying away. And if you look at just overall Christianity, you look at the apostles, you look at the prophets, every single time God sent a prophet to Israel, what happened to them? They were pretty much all murdered, like all of them. You look at the apostles, what happened to them? They're all murdered. All of them except John. They were all murdered, crucified, stabbed to death, they were beheaded, just all the time. And Jesus talked about that. He talked about, if you follow me, then, get ready to pay the ultimate price, because that price can be your life. And that's what happened with Charlie. So it's sad, Just want to talk about this. We at Crypto LLC, we love all Christians, and Charlie Kirk was a Christian, so we love Charlie Kirk. We wish his family the best, his wife, his kids, and we want to promote all of our subscribers after this tragedy. If you're not a Christian, get yourself a Bible. Read it through. If you don't believe in it, at least read it. So at that point, you can at least say, hey, I don't believe it. I did read it. I'm not being lazy. I'm not being intellectually lazy. So get yourself a Bible, read it. I would recommend you read like Matthew, Romans, John, very good books. Read that, and if you don't understand any, some of the chapters in their verses, you probably won't understand much of it as you read it the first time. Then I recommend you read it multiple times, and also visit a church, maybe talk to a pastor, and just look into it, because you can see Charlie Kirk gave his life, and someone that gave his life for a cause is worth to look into. That's going to be it here from Crypto LLC. We're going to miss you, Charlie. We love you. Goodbye.